Number 10. Donald Cowboy Cerrone fights in the UFC welterweight division. He is one of the most entertaining fighters in the UFC today and is very tough to put away. When he fought Eddie Alvarez at UFC 178, Eddie hit him with everything he had, but it wasn't enough to put Donald Cerrone away. Although he has been TKO'd twice in his career, he can definitely take a punch and is one of the toughest fighters in the sport today. Number 9. Carlos Condit fights in the UFC welterweight division. It is always a treat to watch him fight, as he gives it his all to entertain his fans, even getting bloodied up during his fights. When he fought Robbie Lawler at UFC 195, he gave everything he had in the fight and nearly got finished. Even though he lost the fight, he showed his toughness and showed that he was determined to win the fight. He has lost one fight by TKO. He remains to be one of the durable fighters in the sport today. Number 8. Daniel Cormier is the current UFC light heavyweight champion of the world. He has shown that he is able to withstand a heavy blow from his opponent. When he fought Anthony Johnson at UFC 187, Anthony Johnson sent him flying across the octagon with the overhand right. He managed to absorb the punch and carried on fighting. He has faced fierce strikers such as Roy Nelson, Dan Henderson, Alexander Gustafsson and Anderson Silva. He has shown many times that he is able to absorb damage and continue fighting. Number 7. Jon Jones is the former UFC light heavyweight champion. Whilst as champion, he faced Alexander Gustafsson at UFC 165, where during the fight, he displayed his toughness. After getting beat up by Alexander Gustafsson, he dug deep and made a comeback in the later rounds to win the fight. He has fought many dangerous strikers whilst as the champion. These include Quinton Jackson, Lyoto Machida, Vitor Belfort and Glover Teixeira. Jon Jones has never been finished in his MMA career and definitely deserves a spot on this list. Number 6. Junior Dos Santos is the former UFC heavyweight champion. He has a great chin and has taken a lot of damage in his fights. When he faced Cain Velasquez for the second time at UFC 155, he refused to be finished. Cain Velasquez put an absolute beating on him from start to finish. He was bloodied up in his fight against Stipe Miocic and still managed to pull off a victory. He has fought heavy hitters such as Ben Rothwell, Stipe Miocic, Mark Hunt, Shane Carwin and Roy Nelson. He is definitely one of the most toughest fighters in the UFC today. Number 5. Roy Nelson fights in the UFC heavyweight division. He is known to take big punches and endure enormous amounts of damage during his fights. When he fought Derek Lewis at UFC Fight Night 90, Derek Lewis hit him with some very big shots which unfazed Roy Nelson and he continued to fight. He is able to absorb punishment and still pushes forward. He has been knocked out twice in his MMA career and is definitely one of the toughest fighters in the UFC today. Number 4. Nate Diaz fights in the UFC lightweight division. When he fought Conor McGregor at UFC 196, Conor McGregor hit Nate Diaz with everything he had but failed to put him away. Nate Diaz came back in the second round, pushing forward, breaking Conor McGregor and synced in a rear naked choke to claim the victory. He has a solid chin and takes a lot of punishment during his fights. He has only been finished once in his MMA career and is definitely one of the toughest fighters in the sport today. Number 3. Nick Diaz is the former Strikeforce welterweight champion. When he fought Paul Daly in Strikeforce, Paul Daly hurt him early in the first round. Nick Diaz survived the onslaught and came back to finish him by TKO later in the first round. He has gone the distance with elite fighters such as BJ Penn, Carlos Condit, George St. Pierre and Anderson Silva. He has only been finished once in his MMA career and is definitely one of the toughest fighters in the UFC today. Number 2. Diego Sanchez fights in the UFC lightweight division. He always puts on a show for the fans and is never afraid to stand and brawl until either he or his opponent gets finished. When he fought Gilbert Melendez at UFC 166, both fighters were swinging big punches at each other from start to finish. Both fighters got dropped many times during the fight. It is crazy to think that he's only been finished once with his wild fighting style. This just shows how tough Diego Sanchez is and is willing to put himself in danger in order to entertain the fans. Number 1. Frankie Edgar is the former UFC lightweight champion. He is a cardio machine and has shown many times in the octagon what it means to be tough. When he fought Gray Maynard at UFC 136, he was dangerously close of getting finished as he was dropped many times during the fight. He miraculously made a comeback in the later rounds to win the fight by knockout. He has never been finished in his MMA career and has shown many times that he is one of the toughest fighters in the UFC today.